There are some murder mysteries in Coronation Street that do not begin with a body, but with the feeling that one man has given too many people a reason to want him gone. And right now, Theo Silverton is at the very center of that storm. A recent flash forward has hinted that Theo could be killed off in April. And what makes this storyline so gripping is not just whether he dies, but the fact that if it really happens, almost anyone on the street could end up under suspicion. The first person who cannot be ignored is Danielle. She is set to return to the cobbles after Sarah Platt calls her in for a conversation about Theo. Questions surrounding Danielle's past with him, including whether he was ever abusive towards her, are dragging all those old emotions back to the surface. Danielle is still consumed by anger over Theo's betrayal, and she also blames him for Noah's death. That kind of pain does not fade easily. When someone is carrying grief, rage, and a deep sense of loss all at once, the line between wanting answers and wanting revenge can become dangerously thin. Even so, Danielle feels more like carrying a deep wound than someone cold enough to kill, which makes her highly suspicious, but not necessarily the one who would go all the way. Summer is another name that stands out. Recently, she has started seeing Theo in a completely different light, especially after learning how he treated Todd. If the truth about Billy's death in the Corriedale crash comes out, the emotional pressure is only going to intensify. Todd is now almost the only family Summer has left, so her protective instincts are bound to be strong. Summer is not usually the kind of character associated with violence, but sometimes the people who have been emotionally pushed down for the longest and who live entirely for the people they love are the ones most likely to snap in the most extreme way. If the writers want a truly emotional shock, Summer cannot be ruled out. Gary Windass is an entirely different matter. He is someone who has repeatedly shown that he is willing to take drastic action when pushed too far. There was a time when Gary was fairly close to Theo, but now he has seen exactly who Theo really is and has already thrown him out of the builder's yard. The thing with Gary is that he does not just have motive. He also has history. If Theo keeps coming back, keeps causing trouble, or threatens the people Gary cares about, Gary could easily decide that a warning is no longer enough. Out of everyone on this list, Gary feels like one of the most realistically dangerous suspects. George Shuttleworth brings a different kind of danger. He was one of the first to realize that something was badly wrong with Todd, and he has kept trying to pull him out of that dark place ever since. Even though Todd has pushed him away, George has not given up because he genuinely wants to protect him. What makes George especially interesting is that he works as an undertaker, which means he faces death every single day. Of course, that does not make him a killer, but it does give the character a very specific edge. On the surface, he is calm and kind-hearted, but if someone strikes at his emotional weak point, he could react in a way nobody expects. George may not be the most obvious suspect, but he is exactly the kind of character who could deliver a major twist if the show wants to go in a surprising direction. Christina is closely tied to George throughout all of this. She is firmly on his side, and if she has to watch Theo hurt George or drag him into even more stress, Christina could easily lash out on his behalf. Some characters do not act because of what was done to them personally, but because they cannot bear seeing someone they care about suffer. Christina may be that kind of person. She is not the first name viewers would jump to, but that is exactly why she fits the role of the least expected suspect so well. Sarah also has very clear motive. She has always been fiercely loyal to Todd, almost treating him like family. Sarah is no stranger to extreme choices either, especially considering that she was once involved in covering up Callum's death. That history makes her a far more formidable suspect than she may appear at first glance. She is not someone who loses control for no reason, but if she sees Todd being hurt again and feels that things have gone too far, Sarah could be the one who decides it all has to end in the most final way possible. If she were to act, it would probably not come from impulse, but from a mix of protection and desperation. Carl Webster is also carrying a huge secret. He knows that Theo was responsible for Billy's death. It is a truth bomb that has not exploded yet, but once it does, chaos is almost guaranteed. In a place like Weatherfield, when secrets and hatred collide, things rarely end peacefully. Carl has the dangerous advantage of knowing too much, and sometimes the person holding the biggest secret is the one most likely to be dragged deepest into the fallout. If the story shifts into open confrontation after the truth comes out, Carl could easily become the trigger that sends everything spiraling out of control. And then, of course, there is Todd, who is emerging as the most obvious suspect of all. He was seen holding a knife on the day of the flash forward, and that detail alone is enough to put every eye on him. After everything Theo has put him through, it is clear that Todd feels like a man being pushed to his absolute limit. That is what makes Todd both deeply sympathetic and genuinely frightening in this situation. A person who has been hurt for a long time, manipulated, and backed into a corner does not always react rationally anymore. At the same time, Todd may be too obvious. There is a strong chance the show is deliberately steering viewers toward him. In storylines like this, the person holding the knife is not always the person who actually uses it. Looking at the overall picture, Gary, Sarah, and Todd stand out as the three strongest suspects in terms of real danger. Gary has the past to make any threat feel credible. Sarah has a fierce instinct to protect Todd and has already crossed moral lines before. Todd, meanwhile, is the one suffering the most directly, which means his emotions are the most likely to explode. But if the show is aiming for a real shock twist, Summer or George may be the names that leave viewers stunned. Whoever ultimately strikes, the real heart of the story comes down to one thing. Theo has left behind too much pain, too much bitterness, and too many people with reasons to make him pay. When one man gives that many people a motive, his death starts to feel less like a random tragedy and more like a disaster waiting to happen. If you want more of the latest Coronation Street analysis, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next videos.